Good morning. Remember to keep your mic muted and use the chat box. You should see the chat box down there, or over there, depending on how you have your screen set up. We'll start in 1 minute. Good morning. Use the chat box. I'm going to mute all, so go ahead and use the chat box. You have an activity in the chat box. While you're waiting, go ahead and click on that link to share your feelings. Today we're going to talk about poetry, and poetry is often about how an author of a poet makes readers feel. So let's get started. So today's follow-up to our lesson on poetry is going to be The Giving Tree. It's a poem written by Shel Silverstein. He's the poem we're going to read all day today. So the poet, So when you do your seesaw activity, you're going to click on the link first and listen to the poem. It's a really cool poem, one of my favorites. And then you're going to respond. Make sure when you do your response, you are doing a retell as well as sharing a reflection of what you thought about the poem. So let's find out, what is a poem?
What is poetry? Poetry is a piece of writing written by an author called a poet. But what is the purpose of poetry? A poem is written using rhythm, rhyme, and other artistic language to show feelings and emotions. It's often short, but some poets write long poems too. Rhythm and rhyme are a part of many poems. Rhythm is the beat or sound pattern of a poem. Lots of poets use repetition and similar word sounds to create the beat or rhythm. Here's an example. A candy bar, a piece of cake, a lollipop, a chocolate shake. Many poems that have rhythm also have rhyme. Rhyme is having the same sound at the end of two or more words, like bike, hike, and rad, dad. Our poem from earlier has rhyme with the words cake and shake, and it makes me feel hungry. Another common element of poetry is alliteration. Alliteration is when the consonant sound is repeated at the beginning of words. Like Tracy the tiger made a terrifying sound. There are many types of poems that poets write. Some common poems are acrostic, couplet, haiku, limerick, narrative, free verse, humorous, and lyrical. A narrative poem tells a story. There are characters, problems, solutions, and a beginning, middle, and end. Free verse poetry doesn't follow a pattern. You won't see rhythm or rhyme in these poems. Humorous poems are funny, silly, and make us laugh. Lyrical poems express feelings and emotions. They're sometimes sing-songy with their rhythm. Let's look at an example. I have a little frog. His name is Tiny Tim. I put him in the bathtub to see if he could swim. He drank up all the water and gobbled up the soap, and when he tried to talk, he had a bubble in his throat. Let's look for some poetry elements in this humorous poem. Here we see rhyme, rhythm, alliteration, and a character. We know that a poem is written by a poet using rhythm, rhyme, and other artistic language to show feelings and emotions. Poems are usually short, but they can be long too. Listen for descriptions and decide how the poem makes you feel. It could be silly, or sad, or even glad.
So, now that we've learned a little bit about different types of poems and the elements in a poem, we're just going to sit back and listen to a couple poems by Shel Silverstein. you're going to do an activity later with a poem by Shel Silverstein that I talked about earlier in your Seesaw follow-up activity. But for now, just listen. Listen, some of these poems rhyme, some of these poems are funny, some of these poems have a lot of different elements. So let's enjoy.
Where the Sidewalk Ends. Selected poems from Where the Sidewalk Ends, the poems and drawings of Shel Silverstein. Invitation. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer, if you are a pretender, come, sit by my fire, for we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in. Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too. Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too. Went for a ride in a flying shoe. Hooray, what fun! It's time we flew, said Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too. Ickle was captain and Pickle was crew, and Tickle served coffee and mulligan stew. As higher and higher and higher they flew, Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too. Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too, over the sun and beyond the blue. Hold on, stay in, I hope we do, cried Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too. Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too, never returned to the world they knew, and nobody knows what's happened to dear Ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too. Hug-a-war. I will not play at tug-a-war. I'd rather play at hug-a-war, where everyone hugs instead of tugs, where everyone giggles and rolls on the rug, where everyone kisses and everyone grins, everyone cuddles and everyone wins. Listen to the mustn'ts. Listen to the mustn'ts, child. Listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never-haves. Then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. Pancake? Who wants a pancake, sweet and piping hot? Good little Grace looks up and says, I'll take the one on top. Who else wants a pancake, fresh off the griddle? Terrible Teresa smiles and says, I'll take the one in the middle. True story. This morning I jumped on my horse and went out for a ride, and some wild outlaws chased me, and they shot me in the side. So I crawled into a wildcat's cave to find a place to hide. But some pirates found me sleeping there, and soon they had me tied to a pole and built a fire under me. I almost cried, till a mermaid came and cut me loose and begged to be my bride. So I said I'd come back Wednesday, but I must admit I lied. Then I ran into a jungle swamp, but I forgot my guide, and I stepped into some quicksand, and no matter how I tried, I couldn't get out until I met a water snake named Clyde, who pulled me from some cannibals who planned to have me fried. But an eagle came and swooped me up, and through the air we flied. But he dropped me in a boiling lake 1,000 miles wide, and you'll never guess what I did then. I died. Hector the Collector. Hector the Collector collected bits of string, collected dolls with broken heads, and rusty bells that would not ring, pieces out of picture puzzles, bent-up nails and ice cream sticks, twists of wire, worn-out tires, paper bags, and broken bricks, old chipped vases, half shoelaces, Gatling guns that wouldn't shoot, leaky boats that wouldn't float, and stopped-up horns that wouldn't toot, butter knives that had no handles, copper keys that fit no locks, rings that were too small for fingers, dried-up leaves and patched-up socks, worn-out belts that had no buckles, electric trains that had no tracks, airplane models, broken bottles, three-legged chairs and cups with cracks. Hector the collector loved these things with all his soul, loved them more than shining diamonds, loved them more than glistening gold. Hector called to all the people, "Come and share my treasure trunk." And all the silly, sightless people came and looked, and called it junk. Where the sidewalk ends. There is a place where the sidewalk ends, and before the street begins. And there the grass grows soft and white, and there the sun burns crimson bright, and there the moonbird rests from his flight to cool in the peppermint wind. Let us leave this place where the smoke blows black, and the dark street winds and bends, past the pits where the asphalt flowers grow. We shall walk with a walk that is measured and slow, and watch where the chalk-white arrows go to the place where the sidewalk ends. Yes, we'll walk with a walk that is measured and slow, and we'll go where the chalk-white arrows go, for the children they mark and the children they know, the place where the sidewalk ends.
About this team in Microsoft. If you had other teams, they would be listed here. Some of you are part of the TED Ed team. So before we close out the meeting this morning, I want to remind you about your iStation minutes. A lot of us are logging into iStation and perhaps walking away or leaving it logged in, and it counts your minutes, and you're doing 20 minutes 3 times a week in reading and math. But remember, unless you're actively doing an activity, it doesn't really count those minutes towards your usage. So you might see that you were on for 29 minutes, but if you only did 10 seconds of activity, you're only getting 10 seconds. So please, if you're doing 20 minutes of iStation reading, focus, do your best, and move on. We don't want to waste time on iStation. All right? Deal? So no wasting time on iStation, and that goes for math too. If it's challenging, it's supposed to be. You're learning, okay? If you have any questions about what's happening in iStation, please let me know. So that concludes the meeting for today. Today we discovered what is poetry, and we heard some poems by Shel Silverstein. Remember, you're going to do an activity in Seesaw as a follow-up and share a great poem. After the recorded session of the meeting ends, we're going to go over to Teams and do some exploration. So I'll see you there.